I took my wife to a friend's party. She left with my friend because he's a rich CEO. He tapped my head and said, "I'm borrowing her for the night." The next day, my cheating wife found out her key no longer fit the door, and her affair partner called her screaming, "You didn't tell me your husband is." My name's Logan Pierce, and I'm 45 years old with calluses that could sand drywall and a bank account that proves hard work still means something in this godforsaken economy. I own Pierce Custom Smokers right here in Nashville, Tennessee, where the music's loud, the tourists are louder, and everybody thinks they know barbecue until they see one of my grills. I build smokers so beautiful that grown men have literally teared up in my showroom. And I'm not talking about the kind of crying you do during a Pixar movie. I mean full-on, hand over mouth. I need a moment sobbing because they've finally found the grill of their dreams and their wives are absolutely going to murder them for spending $8 grand on it. I've got permanent grease under my fingernails that no amount of that fancy orange pumice soap can scrub out. A mortgage I paid off 3 years early because I'm allergic to owing banks' money. And 4 kids who oscillate between thinking I'm the greatest dad alive and publicly destroying me on TikTok for wearing cargo shorts to their school events. Apparently, pockets are giving divorced dad energy, according to my youngest, Grace, who's 14 and has never paid a utility bill in her life, but somehow has opinions about my fashion choices that could fill a dissertation. My wife Camilla works in corporate PR for some massive firm downtown that represents clients I can't pronounce and causes I don't understand. She's smart as hell, polished like a showroom Cadillac, and has this way of walking into a room that makes everyone sit up straighter and check if their shirt's tucked in. The woman could negotiate peace in the Middle East before lunch and still have time to color coordinate her Pinterest boards. She's also got this very specific allergy to anyone who uses the word y'all in professional settings, which in Tennessee is like being allergic to humidity. Good luck avoiding it, sweetheart. I'm the blue-collar guy who smells like hickory smoke and WD-40 even after 3 showers. She's the cocktail dress type who owns more shoes than I have tools, which is saying something because my workshop looks like Home Depot had a baby with a medieval torture chamber. For 15 years, I genuinely thought opposites attract. You know, that whole she completes me rom-com garbage that makes you believe love conquers all, including the fact that your wife winces every time you say ain't, and you die a little inside whenever she orders a $30 salad that's basically lawn clippings with a fancy name. Turns out opposites don't really attract. They just tolerate each other with varying degrees of passive aggression until someone richer shows up with a yacht, and suddenly all those irreconcilable differences become very, very reconcilable. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me paint you a picture of my daily life before everything went sideways. I wake up at 5:30 every morning, not because I'm some motivational poster psychopath who thinks sleep is for the weak, but because that's when my internal clock decided to permanently set itself back when I opened my business 20 years ago. I stumble to the kitchen, make coffee strong enough to strip paint, and head to the workshop behind our house, a 2,000 square foot monument to American craftsmanship and my refusal to ever work for anyone else again. By 6 a.m., I'm already covered in metal shavings and making enough noise to wake the neighborhood, which is why our neighbors, Tom and Linda, passive-aggressively gifted me noise-canceling headphones last Christmas. I didn't have the heart to tell them that's not how sound works, so now I just wave at them extra enthusiastically whenever they glare at me through their kitchen window. My kids are a whole different story. There's Eli, my 18-year-old who's starting college in the fall and has somehow inherited his mother's business sense and my complete inability to take anything seriously. He handles our social media because apparently I post like a divorced stepdad trying to relate to Gen Z, which I don't fully understand but definitely sounds insulting. Then there's the twins, Mason and Maya, who are 16 and in that beautiful phase where they think everything I do is embarrassing, including breathing too loud and existing in public spaces. And finally, Grace, my baby girl who plays piano like an angel and roasts me like a celebrity on a Comedy Central special. Camilla usually leaves the house by 7:30, dressed in outfits that cost more than my truck payment, smelling like expensive perfume and ambition. She'll kiss me on the cheek, the same way you'd pat a dog who tried his best, and remind me about whatever social obligation I've been dreading for weeks. Meanwhile, I'm standing there in my work jeans with a coffee stain on my shirt, wondering how we ended up here and whether this is what making it is supposed to feel like. See, here's the thing about being married to someone from a completely different world. Eventually, you start noticing the cracks. Not the big, dramatic ones, those you can patch. I'm talking about the tiny hairline fractures that spread slowly, like when she stopped laughing at your jokes and started laughing at them, or when "we should go out more" turned into "I'm going out more," or when your friends became your friends instead of our friends. But I'm a blue-collar guy who builds things for a living, so I figured if I just kept working hard, kept providing, kept showing up, everything would be fine. That's what guys like me do. We fix things. We don't talk about feelings or go to couples therapy or read books with titles like The 5 Love Languages that Camilla kept leaving on my nightstand like breadcrumbs to emotional availability. I just kept building grills, making money, and convincing myself that 15 years of marriage meant something. That the house we bought together, the kids we raised, the life we built, surely that was enough. Surely she wouldn't throw all that away for someone who probably uses beard oil and says things like, "Let's circle back on that," in casual conversation. Spoiler alert, I was wrong. Dead wrong. The kind of wrong that makes you question every decision you've ever made and wonder if you've been playing checkers while everyone else was playing chess. But that's a story for the next chapter, and trust me, it's a doozy. Camilla had been begging me to attend Trevor Langston's house party for 3 weeks straight, which should have been my first red flag. But hindsight is 2020, and I was apparently legally blind. She'd bring it up during breakfast, during dinner, during commercial breaks of whatever crime show we were pretending to watch together while actually scrolling through our phones. "Logan, we really should go," she'd say with that tone that wasn't asking. It was informing me of a decision that had already been made in her head, and I was just the last person to get the memo. Trevor's a self-made tech CEO, the kind of guy who somehow turned an app that rates parking spots into a $200 million empire, because apparently that's how capitalism works now. We went to college together back when he was just a regular dude who wore graphic tees and ate ramen unironically. But somewhere between graduation and his third startup, he transformed into the kind of man who uses words like synergy and liquidity event in actual sentences while wearing Italian leather shoes that probably cost more than my truck's down payment. He's got that Silicon Valley smugness that makes you want to check if your wallet's still in your pocket every time he shakes your hand. The mansion, and I'm using that word correctly because house doesn't capture the sheer audacity of this place, looked like it came with its own zip code, homeowners association, and possibly a small police force. We're talking about a property that made you question whether you'd accidentally driven onto a movie set or if rich people actually live like this. There was a circular driveway made of some kind of fancy stone that probably had an Italian name I couldn't pronounce, a fountain in the front that was taller than my workshop, and enough outdoor lighting to guide aircraft safely to landing. I showed up in my best button-down shirt. The navy one Camilla bought me 2 Christmases ago that I'd worn maybe 4 times, and what I like to call Walmart confidence, which is that specific kind of self-assurance you get from knowing your outfit cost less than $100 total, but you showered and combed your hair, so technically you're trying. Camilla, meanwhile, looked ready for the red carpet in some emerald green dress that probably had a designer's name I'd mispronounce attached to it, heels that could double as weapons, and enough jewelry to fund a small country's GDP. The party was already in full swing when we walked in, and I immediately felt like I'd shown up to a black tie event wearing a Halloween costume labeled "regular guy who works for a living." Everyone was holding champagne flutes like they were born with them attached to their hands, discussing cryptocurrency and real estate markets, and something called NFTs that I'm pretty sure is just expensive JPEG files for people with too much money. There was a guy in the corner explaining blockchain technology to 3 women who looked like they'd rather be literally anywhere else, and a couple near the 7-tier shrimp tower debating whether Aspen or Switzerland was better for skiing, which is apparently a problem normal people have. I grabbed a beer from the bar, the one Budweiser hiding behind 17 craft IPAs with names like Hoppy Thoughts and Wheat Happens, and tried to blend into the furniture. Camilla immediately floated away like a social butterfly on a mission, air-kissing people she'd definitely talked trash about in our kitchen and laughing at jokes I couldn't hear but assumed weren't that funny based on her fake laugh volume. That's when Trevor spotted me. You could see the exact moment his tech bro brain registered my presence, like software loading on a computer that's seen better days. He came striding over in his designer casual wear, You know, the kind of outfit that looks simple but costs more than most people's monthly rent, with this megawatt smile that probably came standard with his Tesla. Logan, my man, he shouted loud enough for half the party to turn and look, which was exactly his intention because guys like Trevor don't do anything without an audience. He slapped me on the back hard enough to make me spill some beer on my hand, which I'm pretty sure was a power move disguised as friendliness. Great seeing you. Been too long, brother. How's the grill business? Still playing with fire? He said, playing with fire, like I was running a lemonade stand instead of a six-figure custom fabrication business. But I smiled and nodded because that's what you do at parties where you don't belong. Business is good, Trevor. Real good. How's the parking app game? His eye twitched slightly. Nobody likes being reminded that their fortune came from telling people where to park their cars, but he recovered fast. Oh, you know, we've pivoted. Expanded into micromobility solutions and urban planning integration, really disrupting the infrastructure space. I had absolutely no idea what any of those words meant in that order, but I nodded like he'd just explained gravity. Sounds synergistic, I said, using the one tech word I knew, and I swear I saw him get a little aroused by it. That's when everything went from uncomfortable to somebody call my lawyer, real quick. Trevor's eyes drifted over my shoulder and locked onto Camilla, who was across the room looking like $1,000,000 and clearly enjoying the attention of some finance bro who definitely owned multiple boats. Trevor's smile changed, got wider but somehow less friendly, like a shark that just spotted something interesting in the water. Hey, speaking of synergy, he said, and I should have known right then that nothing good follows that phrase. Mind if I borrow Camilla for a little private networking? There's some people I want to introduce her to. Could be huge for her career, you know? Connections, opportunities, all that good stuff. He said it so casually, like he was asking to borrow my lawn mower, not my wife. And here's the thing that really burned. He was looking at me, but talking to the crowd that had gathered around us, performing this whole scene for an audience that was eating it up like it was premium entertainment. Before I could process what was happening, before my brain could catch up with my ears and formulate a response that wasn't either pathetic or felonious, he reached out and tapped my head. Twice. Pat pat. Like I was a golden retriever who'd done a good trick. Like I was a child who needed reassurance. Like I was anything other than a grown man whose wife was about to leave with another man, while a room full of rich people watched it happen. Don't worry, buddy, he said with a wink that should be illegal in 12 states. I'll take good care of her. Promise. The crowd laughed. Not like uncomfortable. Is this awkward? Laughing. Actual, genuine laughter, like this was the funniest thing they'd seen all week. Some woman in a dress that cost more than my monthly utilities clutched her pearls and giggled. A dude in a bow tie, an actual bow tie at a house party, nudged his friend and smirked. And Camilla? My wife of 15 years. She was already walking toward Trevor with her networking smile, the one she uses when she's about to close a deal or impress a client. She glanced back at me once, just once, with an expression I couldn't quite read, but that definitely wasn't save me from this creep. I smiled, mostly because the alternative was committing aggravated assault in front of witnesses, and I looked terrible in orange jumpsuits. I raised my beer in a mock toast as Trevor put his hand on my wife's lower back. Too low to be professional, not low enough for me to make a scene without looking insane, and guided her toward the exit. They disappeared through the crowd like water flowing around rocks, and I stood there in my Walmart button-down, holding my domestic beer, getting pitying looks from people who probably thought I was the help. I stayed at that party long enough to finish my beer and watch whatever was left of my dignity circle the drain like water in a cheap motel sink. The thing about humiliation is that it doesn't hit you all at once. It's more like a slow-release poison that seeps into your bloodstream while you're standing there pretending everything's fine. I was the guy at the party everyone was suddenly very interested in, but not in the good way. More like the way people stare at a car accident they drove past, but then circle back to get a better look at. Some woman named Brittany or Bethany or something equally blonde approached me with this sympathetic head tilt that made me want to walk into traffic. That was so bold of Trevor, she said, sipping her champagne like we were discussing wallpaper choices. But you know, sometimes marriages need a little excitement. My husband and I are trying ethical non-monogamy. Very freeing. You should read The Ethical Slut. I did not want to read The Ethical Slut. I wanted to leave this party, burn my clothes, and pretend I'd never met any of these people who thought watching a man get publicly cuckolded was sophisticated entertainment. But instead, I nodded politely, excused myself to the bathroom, and seriously considered climbing out the window like a teenager sneaking out past curfew. The bathroom was bigger than my first apartment and had one of those automatic toilets that flush with the pressure of a jet engine. I splashed cold water on my face and stared at myself in the mirror that was definitely too well lit for this emotional crisis. My reflection looked tired, confused, and roughly 15 years too old to be dealing with this high school drama. When did I become the kind of man who lets another guy pat his head and walk off with his wife while a crowd of strangers laughs about it? I walked back into the party and immediately regretted not going through the window. People were whispering behind their drinks, shooting me these looks that somehow managed to be both pitying and amused. A guy in a three-piece suit actually gave me a thumbs up, like I'd just given my blessing for Trevor to take my wife on a romantic adventure. I wanted to explain that a thumbs up wasn't what I was planning to give anyone, but assault charges are expensive and I had a mortgage to not have anymore. That's when I saw it happen. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows that rich people apparently require by law, I watched Trevor's silver Porsche. Because of course he drives a Porsche, glide down the driveway with my wife in the passenger seat. She was laughing at something he said, probably some tech bro joke about disrupting the monogamy space or whatever nonsense he was selling. The taillights disappeared into the Nashville night, and I stood there holding my second beer, wondering if this was rock bottom or if there was some previously undiscovered level of pathetic I was about to unlock. I left without saying goodbye to anyone, which was easy since nobody was paying attention to me anymore. The entertainment had literally driven away. My truck felt like a sanctuary compared to that marble and money hellscape, and I sat in the parking area for a solid 10 minutes just breathing and trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Was I supposed to call someone? The police? A therapist? My mother, who I'd never hear the end of this from. Instead, I drove home, because where else was I going to go? A bar seemed too cliché, a friend's house required explanations I wasn't ready to verbalize, and a hotel felt like admitting defeat. So I went to the one place that never judged me, never disappointed me, and never borrowed my wife for evening activities, my workshop. By 11 p.m., I was in my element, surrounded by metal, tools, and the kind of honest work that doesn't require you to make small talk or pretend everything's fine. I fired up the welder, pulled down my mask, and started working on a custom smoker order that was due next week. There's something therapeutic about welding. The sparks, the heat, the complete focus required to not accidentally fuse your hand to a piece of steel. It's pure, uncomplicated, and doesn't care about your marriage falling apart in real time. My phone kept buzzing in my pocket, but I ignored it. Probably Camilla texting some excuse about networking running late, or Trevor knowing people who could boost her career. I didn't want to read it. Didn't want to see the lies formatted in blue text bubbles with little timestamps that proved exactly when she decided our marriage was negotiable. I welded for 3 straight hours, building and fixing and creating something tangible while my personal life disintegrated like wet cardboard. My oldest son, Eli, wandered in around midnight, probably heard the noise, and came to investigate. He's a good kid, perceptive in that way teenagers are when they're not completely absorbed in their own drama. "Dad, you okay?" he asked, staying near the door like he wasn't sure if I wanted company or solitude. "Just working," I said, lifting my mask. "Can't sleep." He nodded slowly, processing something in that quiet way he does. "Mom's not home yet." I noticed. That's weird, right? It's midnight on a Tuesday. I didn't know what to tell him. How do you explain to your 18-year-old son that you watched his mother leave a party with another man while everyone laughed? How do you maintain the illusion that adults have everything figured out when you're literally welding at midnight? Because it's the only thing keeping you from driving to that hotel you know they're at and doing something that'll end up on the evening news. "She's networking," I finally said, and even I didn't believe it. Eli gave me this look. Not quite pity, not quite understanding, but something in between that made me feel both seen and completely exposed. "Right? Networking. At midnight." He paused. "Want me to stay out here with you?" And that's when I almost lost it. Because this kid, this young man who I'd raised to be honest and loyal and decent, was offering to keep vigil with his disaster of a father in a workshop that smelled like metal and broken dreams. But I shook my head. Go to bed, son. School tomorrow. I'm fine. He didn't look convinced, but left anyway, and I went back to welding, losing myself in the work until my phone buzzed so aggressively it nearly vibrated out of my pocket. I almost didn't check it. Almost just kept working until sunrise and dealt with reality when it had better lighting. But something made me pull out my phone, and that's when I saw it. A notification from our joint credit card. A charge had just gone through at 2:04 a.m. The Langston Grand Hotel. Room service and accommodations. $512. $512. Not even the decency to use his own card. My wife was cheating on me on my dime, at a hotel that probably had his last name on it, charging romantic midnight snacks to the account I funded with grease-stained hands and 60-hour work weeks. I sat down on my work bench, phone in hand, staring at that notification like it was written in a foreign language I was just learning to read. And that's when something shifted. The hurt was still there, burning like the welding torch I'd just set down, but underneath it was something else. Something colder, clearer, anger, pure, focused, productive anger. By sunrise, I'd stopped crying internally and started planning externally, because revenge, real revenge, doesn't happen in the heat of the moment. It happens in the cold light of day when you've had time to think, to strategize, to build something that'll last longer than an emotional outburst. And brother, I was about to build a masterpiece. The next morning, I woke up on my workshop couch with a crick in my neck that felt like someone had tried to hang me from a tree and given up halfway through. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Camilla and a text that just said, "We need to talk," which is universally recognized as the 4 words that have never preceded anything good in the history of human communication. I deleted it without responding, because we absolutely did not need to talk. She'd said everything she needed to say when she climbed into that Porsche, and I'd heard it loud and clear at 2 in the morning when my credit card got charged for her little romantic adventure. I stumbled into the house, made coffee strong enough to wake the dead and possibly violate several FDA regulations, and stood in my kitchen trying to figure out what you're supposed to do the morning after your wife cheats on you, with a tech millionaire at a hotel that probably had Egyptian cotton sheets and a minibar stocked with champagne that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The internet would probably suggest therapy or meditation or some kind of cleansing juice fast, but I'm a Tennessee man who builds things with my hands, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. I needed to go to Home Depot. Home Depot is the therapy center for betrayed husbands, divorced dads, and men going through any kind of crisis that requires physical solutions to emotional problems. You can't fix a broken marriage with a cordless drill, but you can damn sure fix the locks so the broken marriage stays outside where it belongs. I threw on my work jeans, grabbed my truck keys, and headed out before any of the kids woke up, because this was the kind of mission that required focus and zero questions about feelings. The parking lot was already half full at 7:30 on a Wednesday morning, which tells you everything you need to know about how many men in Nashville are dealing with problems that require lumber, power tools, or industrial-strength solutions. I walked through those automatic doors like a man on a mission, past the seasonal display of grills that couldn't hold a candle to my custom builds, and headed straight for the lock and key section. Here's what nobody tells you about shopping for locks when you're running on 3 hours of sleep and weaponized spite. There are way too many options. Deadbolts, keyed entry locks, smart locks, keypad locks, locks that connect to your phone and probably judge your life choices. I stood there staring at an entire wall of home security options while a Home Depot employee in an orange apron that had seen better days approached me with the cautious energy of someone who'd dealt with plenty of men in crisis. "Can I help you find something?" he asked. His name tag said Derek, and he had the look of a guy who'd heard some stories in his time working the lock aisle. "Yeah, I need 4 deadbolts," I said. "Good ones. The kind that keep out people who think borrowed for the night is an acceptable relationship status." Derek didn't even blink. "Girlfriend or wife?" "Soon-to-be ex-wife." He nodded sagely, like I'd just confirmed a diagnosis he'd suspected. "Aisle 3 has our premium residential deadbolts. Schlage makes a good one, rekey kit included. You'll want the satin nickel finish. Matches most existing hardware." He paused. "You want the kind with the thumb turn on the inside or double key?" "The kind where she can't get in even if she finds a way to copy a key." "Double key it is." He walked me over to the premium section and pointed out a set that looked like it could secure Fort Knox. These are pick-resistant, bump-proof, and rated grade 1 by ANSI. Basically, short of a battering ram, nobody's getting through these without permission. I grabbed 4 sets, because our house has a front door, back door, side door, and garage entry that all needed upgrading from married couple security to Fortress of Solitude status. Derek helped me load them into my cart along with a new drill bit set, because mine were older than my marriage and probably just as worn out. At the checkout, I also grabbed a donut from the sad little bakery section near the exit, because emotional devastation requires sugar, and I'm not above stress eating grocery store pastries at 8 in the morning. The cashier, a woman in her 50s with glasses on a chain and the energy of someone who'd been working retail long enough to develop psychic abilities, scanned my items with knowing eyes. "Rough morning?" she asked, not unkindly. "Just improving home security," I said, taking a bite of the donut that was somehow both stale and soggy. "Specifically from people who think marriage has a return policy." She stopped scanning and looked at me over her glasses. "Honey, I changed my locks 3 times during my second divorce. Best $200 I ever spent, even better than the divorce lawyer." She leaned in conspiratorially. "Pro tip, change your Netflix password too. Nothing pisses them off more than losing access to their watch history." I genuinely laughed for the first time in 12 hours. "That's evil. I respect that." "That's survival," she corrected, handing me my receipt. "Good luck with the locks. And get yourself a real breakfast after that donut. You look like you haven't eaten since yesterday." By noon, I was back home with my arsenal of locks and a breakfast sandwich I'd grabbed at McDonald's because the cashier was right. I needed actual food. Eli was in the kitchen making himself cereal when I walked in carrying bags from Home Depot like they contained classified documents. "Dad, where were you?" he asked, looking up from his phone where he was probably scrolling through TikTok or whatever social media platform the kids use to avoid real human interaction. "Hardware store. Want to help me with a project?" He looked at the bags, then at me, and I watched his teenage brain put together the pieces. "Mom gone all night. Dad buying locks." The math wasn't complicated. "What kind of project?" "The kind where we improve home security and establish healthy boundaries." "You're changing the locks," he said flatly. It wasn't a question. "Every single one. You in?" Eli set down his cereal bowl and grabbed his phone. "Let me text Mason and Maya. They're going to want to see this." "This isn't entertainment," I said, but I was lying because it absolutely was, and we both knew it. "Dad, Mom went to a party with you last night and didn't come home. She's still not here. Trevor Langston is all over your workshop computer search history. Don't look at me like that." I needed to use the printer. "You're changing the locks because she cheated, and honestly, I'm here for it. This is the most interesting thing that's happened in our family since Maya accidentally dyed the dog blue." The kid had a point. And also apparently I needed to clear my browser history better. "Grab the drill from the workshop. And maybe don't tell your siblings the exact details until I figure out how to explain this without sounding like a bitter divorced dad stereotype." Too late. Already texted them. Mason says savage, and Maya says finally. She never liked Mom's friends anyway. By 12:30, we were installing the first lock on the front door, and I was explaining to Eli how deadbolts work while he filmed parts of it on his phone for what he claimed was educational purposes, but I suspected was future TikTok content. The twins showed up and immediately understood the assignment. Mason grabbed tools without being asked, and Maya made a Spotify playlist titled New Locks, New Life that was entirely breakup songs from the 2000s. "What's Mom gonna say?" Eli asked as we finished the second lock on the back door, both of us sweating in the Tennessee heat that had decided noon was a great time to hit 90 degrees. "Hopefully nothing," I said, testing the new key in the deadbolt. It turned smooth as butter, locked solid as my resolve. "She'll be outside." We laughed harder than 2 men and 2 teenagers should laugh while installing boundaries for the first time in 15 years, but there was something cathartic about it. Something right. I was taking control of the one thing I could control, my own damn house that I'd paid for with my own damn money. By 3 p.m., every lock in the house was changed, and I had 4 new keys that only my kids and I possessed. The old keys were in a baggie in my workshop, evidence for the lawyer I definitely needed to call. My phone buzzed with another text from Camilla. "Where are you?" "I'm on my way home." I looked at my kids, looked at my newly secured home, and typed back, "I'm home. Not sure you can say the same." Eli high-fived me. Maya turned up her breakup playlist. Mason just grinned and said, "This is going to be so good." And for the first time since last night, I agreed. That evening, around 6:30, I was sitting on my front porch in my favorite weathered rocking chair with a cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm about an hour ago. But I was drinking it anyway, because wasting coffee felt wrong even when your entire life was falling apart. The kids were inside pretending to do homework, but actually watching the drama unfold through the living room window like it was their own personal reality TV show. I told them to stay inside no matter what happened, which of course meant they were absolutely going to watch everything and probably live tweeted if I wasn't careful. I saw Camilla's white BMW turn onto our street before I heard it. And there's something poetic about watching your cheating wife drive home in a luxury car you helped pay for after she spent the night with another man. The car pulled into the driveway with the kind of confidence that comes from someone who genuinely believes they've done nothing wrong, or at least nothing they can't explain away with enough corporate buzzwords and strategic deflection. She stepped out of the car looking like she'd just finished a walk of shame photo shoot for a magazine that catered to women who make terrible decisions but do it in expensive clothing. Last night's makeup was smudged around her eyes in that way that screams, "I definitely slept, but not at home." Her hair was doing that thing where it's trying to maintain professional volume, but has given up halfway through. And this is the detail that really sent me. She was wearing Trevor's blazer, not draped over her shoulders in some romantic gesture, but actually wearing it like she'd gotten cold at his place, and he'd offered it like they were in a teen movie from the 90s. The blazer probably cost more than my truck's transmission replacement last year, and seeing it on my wife as she strutted up the walkway in her heels from last night made something in my chest feel like I'd swallowed broken glass. But I took another sip of my terrible lukewarm coffee and waited, because the best part of a mousetrap is watching it work. She walked up to the front door with her purse in one hand and her phone in the other, probably still texting Trevor about how amazing their night was, or whatever people who ruined 15-year marriages talk about the morning after. She didn't even look at me sitting there on the porch, which was very typical Camilla. When she's decided you're not worth her attention, you become invisible. She just went straight for the door, dug her keys out of her designer purse that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and slid her key into the lock. Nothing happened. She jiggled it a little, probably thinking she'd gotten the wrong key, even though she'd used that same key approximately 5,000 times over the past 10 years since we'd last changed the locks. She pulled it out, looked at it like it had personally betrayed her, and tried again. Jiggle. Twist. More aggressive jiggling. Still nothing, because those grade 1 Schlage deadbolts don't care about your urgency or your confusion or the fact that you think this is still your house. "Logan, the lock's jammed," she called out, not even turning to look at me, just assuming I'd jump up to fix whatever problem was inconveniencing her, because that's what I'd done for 15 years. "Nope," I said, taking another sip of my coffee and rocking gently in my chair like I was watching a sunset instead of my marriage implode in real time. It's just finally learned self-respect. That got her attention. She spun around so fast I'm surprised she didn't snap an ankle in those heels. And her face went through about 6 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, realization, anger, indignation, more anger, and then this weird attempt at playing the victim that didn't quite land because she was literally wearing another man's jacket. "What are you talking about? Why won't my key work?" "Because it's not your key anymore. Changed all the locks this morning." "Well, me and Eli did it together." Good father-son bonding activity, really. He learned about home security. I learned about establishing boundaries. Very educational. I watched her process this information, and you could actually see the moment her brain shifted from confused wife mode to corporate PR crisis management mode. Her posture changed, her expression smoothed out, and when she spoke again it was in that calm, reasonable voice she uses with difficult clients who don't understand why their company's reputation is in the toilet. "Logan, that's illegal. You can't just lock me out of my own house. We need to discuss this like adults. Whatever you think happened last night." "Oh, I don't think anything happened," I interrupted, setting my coffee mug down on the porch railing. "I know exactly what happened. You left a party with Trevor Langston around 9:30, spent the night at the Langston Grand Hotel in what I'm assuming was a very nice room, ordered $512 worth of room service and accommodations on our joint credit card, and came home wearing his blazer like you're in some kind of romance novel for people with zero self-awareness. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. You were spying on me? Nope. You charged it to my credit card. That's not spying. That's just reading receipts. Although I gotta say, if you're going to cheat, maybe use his money instead of mine? Just a thought for future reference. By this point, our neighbors had started gathering. Tom and Linda from next door had come out onto their porch with what I'm pretty sure was popcorn. The Hendersons across the street were in their yard pretending to check their mailbox, but absolutely watching everything. Mrs. Patterson from 3 houses down had her phone out, and I'm about 70% sure she was filming this. Logan, you're being ridiculous, Camilla said. But her voice had that edge that meant she knew she was losing control of the narrative. Trevor and I were networking. It ran late. He offered me his guest room because I'd had champagne and didn't want to drive. His guest room at the Langston Grand Hotel? That's interesting, because when I called them this morning asking about their room configurations, they told me they don't have guest rooms. They have suites. Romantic suites. With king-sized beds and champagne service. I leaned back in my rocking chair. But hey, maybe you two just really needed to network horizontally. The neighbors made various sounds of shock and amusement. Tom actually choked on his popcorn. Linda was clutching his arm like this was the finale of a show she'd been binge-watching. Camilla's face had gone full crimson now, and she abandoned the calm professional act entirely. You have no right to lock me out. This is my house too. I have legal rights. We're married. We're married. I corrected. Past tense. You filed for divorce the moment you decided Trevor's Porsche was more appealing than our marriage vows. I'm just making it official by controlling the one thing I actually can, my property that I paid for. This is harassment. This is emotional abuse. I'm calling my lawyer. Great idea. While you're at it, ask them about Tennessee's fault-based divorce laws and whether adultery affects asset division. I'll wait. I picked up my coffee mug again. Actually, I won't wait here because it's getting cold and I have dinner to make for my kids. Our kids. The ones you didn't come home to last night because you were too busy networking in a hotel suite. She was shaking with rage now, her hands clenched into fists, and I almost felt bad until I remembered the sound of everyone laughing when Trevor patted my head and walked off with my wife. Almost. Where am I supposed to go? She demanded. And there was a crack in her voice that might have moved me yesterday. But today it just sounded like consequences finally catching up. Maybe stay at Trevor's, I suggested, standing up and stretching like I'd just finished a relaxing afternoon instead of ending my marriage on the front porch. He seems to enjoy borrowing things. Maybe he'll let you borrow a room, or a couch, or whatever rich people with no morals have in their mansions. The neighbors erupted. Tom was full-on cheering. Linda was crying laughing. Mrs. Patterson had definitely gotten all of this on video and was probably already uploading it to Facebook with a caption like Nashville drama at the Pierce house. The Hendersons were high-fiving each other like their team had just scored a touchdown. Camilla looked around at the audience she hadn't realized she'd accumulated, and something in her expression shifted from angry to humiliated. She grabbed her purse, turned on her heel, and marched back to her BMW with as much dignity as someone wearing their boyfriend's blazer could manage. "You'll regret this," she shouted through her car window before peeling out of the driveway fast enough to leave rubber marks. "Already don't," I called back, waving cheerfully. She disappeared down the street, probably heading straight to Trevor's to complain about her unreasonable husband who had the audacity to be upset about infidelity. I stood there on my porch, surrounded by the cheering approval of my nosy neighbors, and raised my coffee mug in a mock toast. Tom and Linda gave me a standing ovation. Mrs. Patterson was still filming. The Hendersons came across the street to shake my hand and tell me I'd done the right thing. And you know what? This is the part that made me laugh out loud on my porch at 7 in the morning. Spousal support. Spousal support. The woman who worked in corporate PR making 6 figures wanted me to pay her monthly checks because apparently cheating on your husband is exhausting work that deserves compensation. There was also a restraining order request claiming I'd unlawfully denied her access to her residence and created a hostile and unsafe environment through harassment. Apparently, changing the locks on my own house after she spent the night with another man was harassment. Meanwhile, leaving your husband at a party to go bang a tech millionaire was just networking. The legal system is wild, y'all. I took the letter inside, made coffee strong enough to strip paint off my truck, and called the one person I knew could handle this level of matrimonial warfare. Harvey Cole, a bulldog attorney who looked like someone had crossed a linebacker with a law professor and given the result a really expensive suit and a permanent scowl that scared prosecutors. I'd met Harvey 5 years ago when he helped me navigate a contract dispute with a supplier who thought delivery date was more of a suggestion, and I'd kept his card ever since because something about him screamed, "This man wins arguments for a living and enjoys it." Harvey answered on the second ring. "Logan Pierce. Haven't heard from you since the McMurray contract situation. Please tell me you're not calling about another supplier issue. Worse, wife issue. She cheated. I changed the locks. Now she's hired Fletcher and Baines and wants half my stuff plus spousal support." There was a pause, and then Harvey laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a full-on belly laugh that sounded like he'd just heard the setup to the world's best joke. "Fletcher and Baines? Oh, this is going to be fun. Those clowns think they're sharks, but they're more like goldfish with law degrees. Give me 2 hours, and I'll be at your place with my associate. Don't talk to anyone. Don't sign anything. And for the love of God, don't post about this on social media. I don't even know how to use Twitter." "Perfect. Keep it that way." 2 hours later, Harvey showed up at my house with an associate who looked like she could calculate your net worth just by looking at your shoes. Her name was Lila Zhou, and she introduced herself as a forensic accountant who treats spreadsheets like murder scenes, which was simultaneously the most terrifying and most impressive thing I'd ever heard someone say about Excel. She was maybe 35, wearing a blazer that meant business, and carrying a laptop that probably cost more than most people's cars. We sat in my dining room, the same table where Camilla and I had eaten approximately 5,000 meals together and discussed everything from mortgage payments to our kids' report cards, and I told them everything. The party, Trevor's head pat, the Porsche, the hotel charge, the lock change, the driveway confrontation, all of it. Harvey took notes in a legal pad with handwriting that looked like it could be used as evidence of a crime, and Lila typed on her laptop with the intensity of someone hacking into the Pentagon. "Okay," Harvey said when I finished, leaning back in his chair like a therapist who'd just heard a particularly juicy confession. "Here's the good news. Tennessee recognizes fault-based divorce, and adultery is absolutely grounds. The bad news is that Fletcher and Baines will argue it was a one-time mistake. She was drunk, you overreacted, blah blah blah. They'll paint her as the victim and you as the controlling husband who locked her out in retaliation. But I have the hotel receipt, time-stamped, on my credit card, which proves she was there, not necessarily what happened there." He held up a hand before I could interrupt. I know, but we need more than a hotel charge to really nail this down. We need a pattern. We need financial discrepancies," Lila interrupted, her eyes still locked on her laptop screen like she'd just discovered the formula for cold fusion. "Logan, do you have access to all your joint accounts? Bank statements, credit cards, investment accounts?" "Yeah, we've always had joint everything. She handles most of the household bills and her own business expenses, but I can see it all." "Good. I need every statement from the last 2 years. Bank accounts, credit cards, retirement funds, business accounts, everything. If she's been cheating, she's been spending money on it, and rich men don't hide their transactions very well because they think they're untouchable." I gave Lila access to our accounts through the bank's online portal, and watching her work was like watching a concert pianist perform. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Her eyes tracked numbers that meant nothing to me, but apparently told her entire stories. And every few minutes she'd make a little noise that sounded like, or interesting, or, "Oh, you idiot." After about 45 minutes of this, she stopped typing, sat back, and looked at Harvey with an expression that I can only describe as Christmas morning mixed with finding $20 in your coat pocket. "Harvey, you're going to want to see this." She turned her laptop around, and even though I'm not a forensic accountant who treats spreadsheets like murder scenes, even I could see what she'd found. Highlighted in yellow were dozens of transactions over the past 18 months. Hotels, restaurants, cash withdrawals, transfers to an account I didn't recognize, and a series of payments to something called TL Holdings LLC. "TL Holdings," I said slowly. "Trevor Langston?" "Give the man a prize," Lila said, pulling up another screen. "Trevor Langston Holdings, registered in Delaware, because of course it is, 6 months ago." And your wife has transferred $46,000 to this LLC over the past 6 months. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger alerts, but consistent. Every 2 weeks, like clockwork, anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000. My mouth went dry. $46,000? From our accounts? Not exactly. Here's where it gets interesting. She pulled up more screens, and I felt like I was watching someone explain a heist in a movie, except this was my actual life. She's been pulling from your business operating account, Pierce Custom Smokers. Small amounts again, always categorized as business expenses or client entertainment, or my personal favorite, professional development. She's been embezzling from your company to fund her boyfriend's LLC. The room went very quiet. Harvey was reading the screen with the kind of focus usually reserved for defusing bombs, and I was trying to process the fact that my wife hadn't just cheated on me. She'd been systematically stealing from my business to help her boyfriend's startup or investment fund or whatever rich people do with LLCs registered in Delaware. So she's not just an adulterer, Harvey said slowly, and I could hear the grin in his voice even though his face stayed professional. She's a thief. She's been committing financial infidelity and actual fraud. Logan, my friend, your wife just brought gasoline to a barbecue competition. Can we use this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper because I was afraid if I spoke too loud this would all turn out to be a dream. Use it. Lila laughed, closing her laptop with the satisfaction of someone who'd just solved a murder cold case. We're going to hang her with it. She's stolen from a marital asset to fund her boyfriend's business. That's embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty, and it completely torpedoes any claim she has to spousal support or equal asset division. Harvey stood up and started pacing my dining room like a lawyer who'd just realized he was about to win the easiest case of his career. We file for divorce on grounds of adultery, cite the financial fraud, demand full restitution plus damages, and ask for full ownership of the business since she's been stealing from it. Fletcher and Baines will try to negotiate, but they've got nothing. Their client is a cheating embezzler who stole from her husband to fund her boyfriend's company. No judge in Tennessee is giving her a dime. What about the house? I asked. You keep it. She forfeited any claim when she committed fraud. Plus, you've got 4 kids who live here. Courts favor stability for children. He grinned, and it was the kind of grin that made me glad he was on my side. Logan, by the time we're done, she'll be lucky to leave this marriage with her yoga mat and her dignity. And honestly, I'm not sure about the dignity. Lila packed up her laptop and handed me her card. I'll need a few days to compile everything into a report, but this is airtight. She's done. Cooked. Finished. After they left, I sat in my dining room staring at the table where my marriage had died approximately 24 hours ago and realized something. I'd come into this fight thinking I was just a blue-collar guy who'd been humiliated by his wife and her rich boyfriend. But it turned out I was actually a business owner whose wife had committed fraud, and that changed everything. I called Eli down from his room. Want to learn about forensic accounting? Is this about mom stealing money? How did you? Thin walls, Dad. Also, I may have been listening from the stairs. So she's screwed. Thoroughly. Good, he said, and we high-fived like we'd just won the Super Bowl, which, in a way, we had. Here's the thing about being a blue-collar business owner that nobody tells you. Sometimes you get so caught up in the actual work of building and creating and managing that you forget to pay attention to the business side of your business. I'm a guy who's most comfortable with a welding torch in my hand and grease under my fingernails, not sitting in boardrooms discussing mergers and acquisitions like I'm some kind of corporate shark. So when my manufacturing division merged with Trevor Langston's logistics startup about 18 months ago, I basically signed the papers my accountant told me to sign, shook hands with a bunch of suits, and went back to my workshop to build grills because that's what I actually enjoy doing. The merger made sense at the time. Trevor's company handled distribution and logistics for tech hardware, and my custom fabrication business needed better supply chain management to scale up production. His team knew technology and shipping routes. My team knew how to build things that didn't fall apart. And together we formed some kind of business supercouple that was supposed to revolutionize the custom manufacturing space, or whatever buzzwords the consultants used to justify their fees. I retained 51% ownership because I'm not an idiot and my lawyer at the time insisted on maintaining controlling interest, but I'd basically been a silent partner ever since. letting Trevor run the day-to-day operations while I focused on the actual product, which meant Trevor had been strutting around for the past year and a half as the CEO of our merged company, giving TED Talks about disruption and innovation, getting interviewed in business magazines, and generally acting like he'd built an empire from scratch instead of merging his moderately successful logistics app with my actually profitable manufacturing business. And because I didn't care about the spotlight or the speaking circuit or any of that corporate theater, I let him have it. I was happy being the guy in the background who actually made the stuff while he took the credit and the stage time. But here's what Trevor apparently forgot in all his self-congratulatory glory. I still owned 51%. I was still, technically and legally, his boss. And bosses can fire people, especially when those people sleep with their wives and steal $46,000 from company accounts to fund their own side projects. The Monday after Lila discovered Camilla's embezzlement scheme, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I called an executive meeting at our main office. Not a, hey, let's catch up over lunch meeting, but a full formal boardroom situation with our CFO, our operations manager, our head of HR, and all the department leads who actually ran the company, while Trevor gave PowerPoint presentations about synergy. I sent the meeting invite at 8 p.m. on Sunday night, marked it as mandatory, and included exactly zero context about what we'd be discussing. I showed up at the office at 8:30 Monday morning wearing my best suit. And yes, I own a suit. Multiple suits actually, because despite what my wife and her country club friends thought, I'm not some backwoods hick who doesn't know how to dress professionally. I just choose not to most of the time because suits are uncomfortable and I prefer clothes that don't mind getting dirty. But today called for armor. And in the corporate world, armor comes in the form of a charcoal gray Tom Ford suit that I'd bought for my father's funeral 5 years ago and had worn maybe 3 times since. Our CFO, Patricia Chun, was already in the conference room when I walked in, and her eyebrows shot up so fast I thought they might achieve orbit. Logan, I didn't know you were coming to this meeting. I mean, I saw you scheduled it, but I thought that I'd send someone in my place like usual. I sat down at the head of the conference table, the spot I'd never actually sat in before because I'd always let Trevor have it. Not today, Patricia. Today I'm here for the full show. The other executives filed in looking confused. Dave Morrison from operations, Jennifer Huang from HR, Robert Torres who ran our manufacturing floor, and about 6 other department heads who definitely weren't used to seeing me in the office before noon, let alone in a suit. They all took their seats, shooting each other those looks people give when they're trying to figure out if someone died or if the company's being sold. At exactly 9 a.m., Trevor walked in. He was wearing what I'd come to think of as his uniform. Expensive jeans that somehow cost more than dress pants, a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to show off his Apple Watch, and loafers that probably required a mortgage payment. His hair was styled in that deliberately messy way that takes 30 minutes and 6 products to achieve, and he had his phone in his hand because God forbid he go 15 seconds without checking his email or his stock portfolio or whatever app tells rich people how rich they are. He walked in smiling, nodding at everyone like a politician working a room, and started to head for the chair at the head of the table. You know, the one I was currently occupying. He stopped mid-stride when he saw me sitting there, and I watched confusion flicker across his face before his PR training kicked in and he smoothed it into a professional smile. Logan, buddy, didn't expect to see you here. Taking a break from the workshop? He said it like I was a kid playing hooky from school, condescending and amused. I didn't realize you were planning to sit in on this meeting. Want to take a different seat so we can get started? Nope, I said, leaning back in my chair like I owned the place, which, fun fact, I did. I'm good right here. You can sit over there. I gestured to an empty chair about halfway down the table, the kind of seat middle management occupies. Trevor's smile tightened, but he recovered quickly and sat down, probably assuming this was some kind of power play that would be over in 5 minutes, and we'd all go back to pretending he ran everything. He set his phone on the table face up and folded his hands like a man who'd been to 1,000 meetings and was confident he'd survive 1,000 more. All right, everyone, I said, looking around the table at faces that ranged from confused to intrigued to, in Patricia's case, deeply concerned because she'd clearly done enough math to figure out why I might suddenly be interested in attending meetings. Thanks for coming on short notice. I know I don't usually show up to these things, and I appreciate everyone's patience, while I've let Trevor handle the day-to-day operations. But something's come to my attention that requires immediate action. What's going on? Trevor asked, and there was an edge to his voice now, a crack in the confident facade. Is there a problem with the quarterly numbers? Because I can explain. Oh, there's definitely a problem, I interrupted, pulling out a manila folder that Lila had prepared for me, thick with printouts and documentation that could probably be used as a murder weapon if you threw it hard enough. But it's not with the quarterly numbers. It's with you. The room went dead silent. Jennifer from HR sat up straighter, her hand moving toward her own folder like she was preparing to take notes on what was clearly about to be the most interesting meeting of her career. Patricia closed her laptop slowly, and I could see her mentally updating her resume. I'm sorry, Trevor said, trying to laugh it off. Logan, if this is about. It's about a lot of things, actually. I opened the folder and slid a stack of papers across the table toward him. It's about you sleeping with my wife. It's about her transferring $46,000 from our company operating account to your personal LLC. It's about you using company resources for personal benefit. And it's about you apparently forgetting who actually owns this company. Trevor's face went white, then red, then some color that doesn't exist in nature. He looked down at the papers in front of him, bank statements, transfer records, hotel receipts, all highlighted and annotated by Lila's forensic accounting magic. And I watched his brain try to calculate a way out of this that didn't end with him being escorted out by security. Logan, listen, I can explain, he started, but I held up my hand. I don't want explanations. I want you gone. Effective immediately, you're terminated for breach of ethics, misappropriation of company funds, and general douchebaggery, which I'm pretty sure violates at least 3 sections of our employee handbook. I looked at Jennifer. That's a legal termination ground, right? The first 2 definitely are, she said, trying not to smile. The third one is more of a bonus. Trevor stood up so fast his chair rolled backwards and hit the wall. You can't fire me. I built this company. I'm the CEO. You were the CEO. I corrected, standing up myself because this moment deserved to be face-to-face. Of a company I own 51% of, which makes you an employee. An employee who slept with his boss's wife and stole from the company. So yeah, I absolutely can fire you, and I'm doing it right now, in front of witnesses, so there's no confusion later. I gestured to Dave Morrison, our operations manager, who looked like he was trying not to throw a party right there in the conference room. Dave, you're interim CEO until we hire someone who understands that sleeping with employees' spouses is bad for company culture. Patricia, freeze all of Trevor's access to company accounts and systems. Jennifer, please have security escort Mr. Langston out of the building and ensure he returns all company property, including that laptop he's probably got loaded with confidential information. Trevor was sputtering now, looking around the room for support that absolutely wasn't coming because, as it turned out, nobody actually liked him. They'd tolerated him because they thought he was in charge, but now that the curtain had been pulled back, every face around that table showed some variation of satisfaction. This is insane, he shouted, grabbing his phone off the table. I'll sue you. You'll what? Sue me for firing you after you committed fraud. I smiled, and it felt good. Go ahead. My lawyer would love that. Please return any borrowed property on your way out, including my wife's dignity. Although honestly, I'm not sure we can get that back at this point. Security arrived. 2 guys named Marcus and Jeff who I'd personally hired 3 years ago and who'd always been cool to me when I came through the building. They walked in looking professional and maybe slightly excited to finally have something interesting to do besides check badges and eat donuts in the lobby. Trevor looked at them, then at me, then back at the security guards like he was waiting for someone to tell him this was a prank. When nobody did, he grabbed his jacket off the back of his chair and headed for the door, muttering under his breath just loud enough for the whole room to hear. You didn't tell me your husband is the owner. And that, right there, was the most beautiful sentence I'd ever heard. Music to my ears. Symphony-level composition. I should have recorded it and made it my ringtone. The door closed behind Trevor and his security escort, and the conference room erupted in whispers and barely suppressed grins. Patricia looked at me with something that might have been respect. Well, she said, that was the most interesting termination I've witnessed in 20 years of corporate finance. A conservative navy dress that probably came from Nordstrom, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a way that was supposed to make her look humble and sympathetic. She'd even toned down her makeup, going for that natural, "I'm just a simple woman who made a mistake" look that was about as authentic as a $3 bill. The only thing missing was a string quartet playing sad violins in the background. The judge was the Honorable Patricia Brennan, a woman in her early 60s who had a reputation for not suffering fools and taking exactly zero nonsense from lawyers who thought they could charm their way through family court. I'd heard stories about Judge Brennan. She'd once made a cheating husband pay his wife's legal fees after he showed up to court in a Ferrari he'd bought with marital assets, and she'd held another guy in contempt for lying about his income while wearing a Rolex that cost more than most people's houses. Basically, she was the last person you wanted presiding over your case if you were guilty, and the best person if you weren't. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Brennan," the bailiff announced, and we all stood up like kids at school assembly while she swept in and took her seat behind the bench with the energy of someone who'd already had 3 cups of coffee and zero patience for drama. "Be seated," she said, adjusting her glasses and looking at the case file in front of her like it personally offended her. "This is the matter of Pierce versus Pierce, dissolution of marriage. I've reviewed the initial filings, and I have to say, this is quite the interesting case. Mr. Fletcher, your client is seeking spousal support and equal division of assets despite," she flipped through some pages, "multiple allegations of adultery and financial impropriety. You want to explain that to me?" Marcus Fletcher stood up with the kind of confidence that comes from winning cases through sheer force of expensive suits and Southern charm. "Your Honor, my client made a mistake. A single mistake during a difficult period in her marriage. She attended a business function with a colleague. They had too much to drink, and she made a poor judgment call. However, Mr. Pierce responded by unlawfully evicting her from the marital home, publicly humiliating her in front of their neighbors, and refusing any attempt at reconciliation or couples counseling." Judge Brennan looked at him over her glasses. "A single mistake? That lasted all night? At a hotel?" "Your Honor, my client stayed in a separate room. In a hotel that, according to the credit card statement I'm looking at, charged 1 suite with 1 bed." She turned to Harvey. "Mr. Cole, I assume you have something to say about this?" Harvey stood up like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. "Your Honor, we have substantial evidence that Mrs. Pierce's single mistake was actually part of an ongoing affair with Mr. Trevor Langston, CEO of a tech company that merged with my client's manufacturing business. Furthermore, we have documented proof that Mrs. Pierce embezzled $46,000 from the marital business account over a 6-month period, transferring those funds to an LLC owned by Mr. Langston." The courtroom went quiet except for the sound of Camilla's sharp intake of breath and the rustle of Marcus Fletcher's papers as he frantically searched for something that would counter what Harvey just said. He came up empty, which was delicious to watch in real time. "Embezzlement." Judge Brennan's eyebrows went up. "That's a serious accusation, Mr. Cole. It's a serious crime, Your Honor." Harvey nodded to Lila, who stood up and approached the bench with a binder that was thicker than a phone book. "My associate, Ms. Zhou, is a forensic accountant who has compiled a comprehensive report documenting every transaction. Bank transfers, hotel charges, cash withdrawals, all of it traced directly from Pierce Custom Smokers' operating account to TL Holdings LLC, which is owned and operated by Trevor Langston." Judge Brennan took the binder and started flipping through it, and I watched her expression shift from mildly interested to seriously concerned to what I can only describe as judicially pissed off. She spent about 5 minutes reading while the entire courtroom sat in silence, and you could hear Marcus Fletcher's career deflating like a sad balloon. "Mr. Fletcher," Judge Brennan finally said, setting the binder down with enough force to make everyone jump slightly. "Your client stole $46,000 from her husband's business to fund her boyfriend's company. That's not a mistake. That's fraud." "Your Honor, if I may," Fletcher tried, but Judge Brennan held up her hand. "You may not. I'm not finished." She turned to Camilla, "And if looks could convict, my soon-to-be ex-wife would have been serving life without parole. Mrs. Pierce, you spent $46,000 of marital assets on another man's company while sleeping with its CEO, who, and I find this particularly ironic, reports to your husband, who owns 51% of the merged company. Is that correct?" Camilla opened her mouth, closed it, looked at her lawyer for help that wasn't coming, and then quietly said, "Yes, Your Honor." "And you're seeking spousal support?" Judge Brennan's tone suggested she found this request about as reasonable as asking for a refund on a used parachute. "Your Honor, my client has become accustomed to a certain lifestyle," Fletcher started, but Judge Brennan cut him off with a look that could have frozen hell. "A lifestyle funded by money she stole from her husband's business to give to her boyfriend? Mr. Fletcher, I've been doing this for 23 years, and I have to say, the audacity of this request is breathtaking. I'm almost impressed." Harvey was trying not to smile, but I could see it tugging at the corners of his mouth. Lila had her poker face on, but her eyes were practically glowing with satisfaction. This was better than any outcome we could have hoped for, and we weren't even halfway through the hearing. Judge Brennan continued reading through the evidence, occasionally making notes, and at one point she actually laughed, not a polite courtroom chuckle, but a genuine, "this is absurd," laugh that made the court reporter look up from her machine. "Your Honor," Fletcher tried again, clearly desperate to salvage something from this disaster. "My client is willing to forego the spousal support request if we can negotiate a fair division of assets." "Fair?" Judge Brennan interrupted. "What exactly would be fair here, Mr. Fletcher? She committed adultery, embezzled from the business, and you want me to give her half of what's left? The business she stole from. Community property laws state. Community property laws also account for fault-based grounds and dissipation of marital assets." She closed the binder and looked directly at Camilla. "Mrs. Pierce, here's what's going to happen. You're going to receive exactly nothing from the business you stole from. You're going to receive no spousal support. Mr. Pierce will retain the marital home, as he has 4 minor children who require stability. You will split whatever is left in your joint personal accounts. After restitution of the $46,000 you embezzled, with interest." "Your Honor, that's..." Fletcher started. "I'm not finished." Judge Brennan's voice could have cut glass. "Mrs. Pierce will also be responsible for her own legal fees, as this court does not look favorably on people who commit fraud and then expect their victims to pay for their lawyers. Mr. Pierce will retain full custody of the children, with Mrs. Pierce receiving supervised visitation until such time as she can demonstrate financial and personal stability." Camilla was crying now, but they weren't the sympathetic tears of a wronged woman. They were the tears of someone who just realized that consequences are real and judges don't care about your Hallmark movie costume. Marcus Fletcher looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 20 minutes, and I'm pretty sure he was mentally calculating how much of his retainer he'd have to return. As for assets, Judge Brennan continued, clearly on a roll now. "Mrs. Pierce will receive her personal effects, any individually titled property, which according to this file is none, and a 2009 Toyota Yaris currently valued at approximately $1,200. "A Yaris?" Camilla choked out. "I drive a BMW. "You drove a BMW," Judge Brennan corrected, "which was titled in your husband's name as a company vehicle. The Yaris is the only car individually titled to you. Perhaps you should have thought about vehicle ownership before committing adultery and embezzlement." Even the bailiff was struggling to keep a straight face at this point. Harvey was writing notes on his legal pad, probably documenting this moment for his highlight reel. Lila had closed her laptop, her work here clearly done. Judge Brennan banged her gavel with the finality of a door slamming shut on Camilla's dreams of taking half my stuff. "This court finds in favor of the petitioner, Mr. Pierce. Divorce granted on grounds of adultery. Mrs. Pierce, I strongly suggest you use your apparent business acumen to find gainful employment, because you're going to need it. We're adjourned." As everyone stood for the judge's exit, I looked over at Camilla, who was sobbing into a tissue while Marcus Fletcher awkwardly patted her shoulder and probably contemplated retirement. She caught my eye for just a second, and I saw everything there: regret, anger, humiliation, and the dawning realization that she'd traded 15 years of marriage and financial security for a tech bro with a Porsche and an LLC. Harvey clapped me on the shoulder as we walked out of the courtroom. "Well, that went better than expected." "Better?" I said. "That was beautiful." The bailiff was laughing. "He was trying very hard not to," Lila added. But yes, he was definitely laughing. We stepped out into the Nashville sunshine, and for the first time in a month, I felt like I could actually breathe. I should have known the story would leak eventually, because Nashville is technically a big city, but socially functions like a small town where everyone knows everyone else's business and gossip spreads faster than a grease fire in a deep fryer. What I didn't expect was for it to go nuclear on the internet within 48 hours of the court hearing, transforming me from Logan Pierce, guy who builds grills, to Logan Pierce, patron saint of betrayed husbands everywhere. It started with Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor who'd filmed the driveway confrontation on her phone like she was documenting a nature documentary. She posted it to her Facebook with a caption that read, "You won't believe what just happened on my street," which is basically the internet equivalent of ringing a dinner bell for drama-hungry social media users. Within 6 hours, that video had been shared 3,000 times, picked up by a local Nashville gossip Instagram account called Music City Tea, and somehow made its way to Twitter where it got picked up by one of those accounts that posts viral videos with commentary. But the video was just the appetizer. The main course came when someone, I'm guessing one of the court employees who really needed to review their confidentiality agreements, leaked details about the divorce hearing to a blogger who runs a site called Tennessee Justice Watch that covers interesting court cases. The blogger, a woman named Jessica Mills who apparently has a law degree and too much time on her hands, wrote a piece titled, "Man Fires Wife's Boyfriend After Being Borrowed for the Night, Then Wins Everything in Court." The article was detailed, dramatic, and devastatingly accurate. She had everything: the party, the head pat, the hotel charge, the lock change, Trevor getting escorted out of his own company by security, and the judge basically roasting Camilla in open court. Jessica wrote it like a thriller novel, and by the time I found out about it at 10 p.m. on a Thursday night when Eli burst into my workshop yelling, "Dad, you're famous on the internet," it had already been read 200,000 times and was climbing. By Friday morning, the story had escaped containment. It was on Reddit's front page in 3 different subreddits: r/pro-revenge, r/nuclear-revenge, and r/justice served, with a combined total of about 40,000 upvotes and comments that ranged from supportive to absolutely unhinged. Someone on Twitter with 500,000 followers had posted about it with the caption, "This is the most satisfying revenge story I've ever read, and it's real." And suddenly my phone was blowing up with notifications, friend requests, and messages from people I hadn't talked to since high school asking if I was that grill guy from the viral story. The memes started rolling in by Friday afternoon, and I have to admit, some of them were absolutely brilliant. My personal favorite showed a photo someone had pulled from my business website, me standing next to one of my custom smokers, wearing my work apron and safety glasses, with the caption, "Respect the man with soot on his hands. He probably owns your company." That one got reposted about 50,000 times and somehow became the unofficial slogan of blue-collar workers everywhere who were tired of being underestimated by corporate types. There was another one that showed a split image. On one side was a guy in a suit looking smug and corporate, labeled, "Thinks he's the boss." And on the other side was a picture of someone welding, labeled, "Actually is the boss." That one hit a little too close to home, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't save it to my phone. Eli, being 18 and fluent in internet culture, immediately saw the business opportunity. He came to me Saturday morning while I was in the workshop trying to ignore the fact that my personal life had become entertainment for millions of strangers, and he had his laptop open with a presentation that he'd apparently stayed up all night making. "Dad, we need to capitalize on this," he said, setting the laptop on my workbench between a half-finished smoker and my coffee mug that had gone cold 3 hours ago. "Your story is trending on literally every platform. People are invested. They're rooting for you. And more importantly, they want to buy stuff from you." Eli, I'm not using my divorce as a marketing strategy. You're not. The internet already did that for you. I'm just saying we should take advantage of the fact that people are Googling Pierce custom smokers about 1,000 times an hour right now. He pulled up our website analytics, and sure enough, our traffic had gone from maybe 200 visitors a day to over 50,000. Our contact form has 273 requests for quotes that came in since yesterday. 273, Dad. That's more than we usually get in 3 months. I stared at the screen, trying to process the numbers that didn't seem real. People want to buy grills from the guy whose wife cheated on him. They want to buy grills from the guy who took his life back and owned it. Eli corrected. You're not the victim in this story anymore. You're the hero, and heroes sell products. He clicked to another tab showing our Instagram account, which I barely knew we had. I've been posting behind-the-scenes stuff from the workshop, some of your custom builds, and people are eating it up. We've gained 15,000 followers since Thursday. 15,000? I sat down on my work stool, suddenly feeling like I needed to be closer to the ground. Eli, that's insane. That's marketing, baby. He was way too excited about this, but I had to admit, he had a point. Here's what I'm thinking. We launch a special edition line called the Loyalty Series. Premium smokers, top-of-the-line craftsmanship, everything we're known for, but with a custom engraving that says, "Don't get burned." Get it? Because they're smokers, and also because loyalty. I looked at my son, this kid who I'd raised on a steady diet of terrible dad jokes and life lessons learned through manual labor, and realized he'd inherited both my work ethic and apparently a devious marketing brain I didn't know existed. That's actually brilliant. I know, he said without a trace of humility. And I already mocked up some designs. He showed me the renderings he'd created, beautiful custom smokers in our signature style, but with the phrase, "Don't get burned," etched into the metal in a font that somehow managed to look both classy and slightly threatening. They were gorgeous, they were on brand, and they were absolutely going to sell like crazy. How much do we charge for these? I asked, because I was still thinking like a craftsman and not a business owner riding a viral wave. 1,500 more than our standard premium model, Eli said without hesitation. People will pay for the story. They'll pay to be part of something that means standing up for yourself and not taking crap from people who don't respect you. This isn't just a grill, Dad. It's a statement. We launched the Loyalty Series that Sunday night with a post on our website and social media that Eli wrote. Introducing the Loyalty Series, premium smokers for people who know their worth. Don't get burned. Simple, clean, and apparently exactly what the internet wanted, because we sold out our first production run of 25 units in 6 hours. 6 hours. People were posting photos of their orders on social media, tagging us, sharing the story, and somehow turning my personal nightmare into this weird cultural moment about self-respect and not letting people walk all over you. A sports radio host in Atlanta bought one and talked about it on his show. A lifestyle blogger in Austin made an entire post about buying products from people with integrity. A celebrity chef whose name I can't mention for legal reasons, but who definitely has a show on the Food Network, called our business line directly and ordered 3 custom units for his restaurants. The orders kept coming. By Monday, we had a wait list of over 300 people willing to pay premium prices and wait 12 weeks for a custom smoker, just so they could own a piece of the Loyalty Series. Eli hired 2 of his friends from high school to help manage customer service inquiries, and I had to bring on 3 additional welders just to keep up with production demand. My twins, Mason and Maya, who'd previously shown zero interest in the family business beyond occasionally helping me move heavy equipment, suddenly wanted in on the action. Mason started filming TikToks of the manufacturing process, welding, metal cutting, assembly, and his videos were getting hundreds of thousands of views from people who apparently loved watching blue-collar work being done with skill and precision. Maya, who'd always been good with design, started creating custom engraving options for customers who wanted to personalize their smokers with their own anti-betrayal messages. By Wednesday, we'd been contacted by 3 different news outlets wanting to do human interest stories, 2 podcasts about entrepreneurship, and a producer from a morning talk show who wanted to fly me to New York to discuss turning personal tragedy into business triumph, which sounded exhausting but also kind of amazing. The weirdest part was the messages I got from complete strangers thanking me for my story. Men and women both, people who'd been cheated on or disrespected or underestimated, telling me that reading about what happened made them feel like maybe they could stand up for themselves too. A guy in Oregon told me he finally left his toxic job after reading about me firing Trevor. A woman in Florida said she filed for divorce from her husband of 20 years after seeing that people could survive and even thrive after their marriages ended. I wasn't trying to be inspirational. I was just trying to survive. But apparently, sometimes survival looks like inspiration from the outside. Even Grace, my youngest, who usually found everything I did embarrassing, came to me after school one day and said, "Dad, the kids at school think you're cool now. They're calling you the revenge dad. Is that weird?" Super weird, I admitted. But I'll take it. Pierce Custom Smokers went from a solid local business, doing maybe $500,000 a year in revenue, to a viral sensation, doing 3 times that in a single quarter. We had to move to a bigger facility, hire actual office staff, and I had to accept that I wasn't just a guy with a workshop anymore. I was running an actual company that people cared about. And every single smoker we sold had that engraving, "Don't get burned." It was petty, it was perfect, and it was proof that sometimes the best revenge isn't just living well. It's building something so successful that everyone who doubted you has to watch you win. Camilla was apparently not thrilled about any of this. According to a mutual friend who told me she'd complained that I was exploiting our private matters for profit, which was rich coming from someone who'd literally stolen $46,000 from me to fund her boyfriend's business. But her complaints didn't matter anymore, because she wasn't part of my story anymore except as the villain who made the hero's journey necessary. In business, like the kids say on the internet, it was absolutely bussin', or fire, or whatever the current slang is. Point is, it was smoking hot. 6 months later, life smells like hickory smoke and freedom, which is a significant upgrade from expensive perfume and resentment. I wake up every morning without that knot in my stomach that comes from living with someone who's secretly planning their exit strategy, and honestly, that alone is worth more than any settlement I could have gotten in court. Camilla's renting a 1-bedroom apartment near the interstate, the kind of place where the walls are so thin you can hear your neighbor's life choices in surround sound. She's working for a smaller PR firm now. Turns out embezzling from your husband's company and having an affair with a client doesn't look great on your corporate resume. And according to Grace, who reluctantly does her court-mandated visitations, Mom spends most of her time rediscovering herself through yoga classes and wine that comes in boxes instead of bottles. It's a whole journey, apparently. Trevor's selling yachts in Miami under a slightly modified last name because his reputation in Nashville tech circles is basically radioactive after getting fired for sleeping with his business partner's wife and facilitating embezzlement. Karma came for him with a sunburn and a significantly smaller bank account. And I'm not saying I check his LinkedIn profile occasionally to watch his professional descent, but I'm also not saying that. My kids are absolutely thriving in ways I didn't expect. Eli's running our marketing and social media full-time now, turning down college scholarships because he's making more money managing our viral brand than most graduates make in their first jobs. The twins are in their junior year, and Mason started a YouTube channel about manufacturing that somehow has 200,000 subscribers who love watching him explain welding techniques. Maya's handling custom design orders and already talking about studying industrial design in college. And Grace, my baby girl who's now 15 and terrifying, plays piano while I work in the evenings. This beautiful background music that makes the workshop feel less like a job and more like home. Sometimes I glance at the framed $1 bill hanging above my desk in my office, the same dollar Trevor used that night to symbolically borrow my wife, and I just laugh. It's mounted next to a brass plaque that Eli had made as a joke, but that I kept because it's actually perfect. The plaque reads, "Some men get burned. Others learn to build with fire." Pierce Custom Smokers is doing numbers that would have seemed impossible a year ago. We've got a 6-month wait list, celebrity clients, and a brand that somehow became about more than just grills. It became about self-respect, loyalty, and not letting people treat you like you're disposable. Every smoker that leaves our facility has that engraving, "Don't get burned." In business, it's not just good, it's smoking hot, which is exactly how I like it. Turns out the best revenge isn't just living well. It's building something so successful that everyone who underestimated you has to smell the smoke and wonder what they missed. I'm not bitter anymore. I'm just busy. And honestly, that's better than any closure therapy could have given me.